evening and welcome to the August 20th, 2020 meeting of the Grafton Mass Disability Commission. I'm Roger Trahan, Chair of the Commission, and I call this meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Christy Proctor.
Here.
Daryl Reining.
Here.
Matt Often.
Here.
Catherine Dorr.
Here.
Christy Proctor, already there. Who am I forgetting?
That's it.
Oh, that's me. All right. Melissa Lackey and Bob Perla will not be here. Okay. And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Jen Anderson.
Here.
Okay. Jen Anderson's Grafton's Recreation Director. And so with Melissa Lackey absent, who either, I see Christy raising her hand, volunteering to take minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I owe you a coffee. All right. So this open regarding introduction and remote meeting guidelines, this open meeting of the Grafton Disability Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Grafton Disability Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom, as reflected on our agenda, which is posted on our commission's webpage on the town website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Third and final page. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first read public comments and questions received in advance of the meeting, followed by real-time board and/or applicant responses. Public comments during the meeting will be conducted through the chat feature in Zoom, and the chair will read real-time comments and questions typed by computer participants in the chat feature, followed by real-time board/applicant responses. Lastly, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Wow, that ate up the first 15 minutes of the meeting, right? Okay. Announcements. This is just a boilerplate agenda item. And I, up until this afternoon, didn't have any announcements, but I will have one that came to me this afternoon. Does anyone have any comments or announcements? Okay. All right. So I received an email this afternoon, and I went back and forth clarifying that this was a definite, but Bob Perla will be resigning from the Disability Commission, okay? And he gave me the okay to put it forth publicly in this meeting in the context of, on our agenda, we will be discussing the division of duties, and he, we need to incorporate the fact that he will not be part of that division of duties. So he was on Mill Villages, he was on Grafton Common and the website. So we will need to divvy up those tasks, and he will be making it official with a letter to the select board. He said he'd CC me on that. And so the select board would then need to accept his resignation before posting the vacancy. But I at least wanted to get it out there because of the agenda item where we're talking about division of duties. Otherwise, I would have waited until he had formalized it after tomorrow. So gonna miss Bob's presence and his input and expertise. And, I wish him well. So, there was no detail, but it was something I exchanged emails with him, and it is a definite decision. So, okay, moving on to agenda item 2. There were, and I put these as part of the packet, but I also sent these. Has everyone been getting my emails? I've been sending them through the Disability Commission email address. So, so public comments received. These came through my Hotmail address, and they're all through 3 emails covering 4 items. They're from Scott Ricker in town, and I've since let him know that this can come through the Grafton Disability Disability Commission at grafton-ma.gov. And I know Missy isn't here, but we had previously discussed that in those instances that something comes through that email, that the clerk would simply acknowledge it, and then we would take it from there, likely putting it on the next agenda. The first item had to do with the accessibility complaint filed regarding Grafton Land Trust. I put Ekblaw. Scott indicated Ekblaw, but it's really the Wheeler entrance to Montgomery Wood. Is everyone familiar with that area? Okay. And so he had indicated a couple of items regarding stone that was put down, I guess, to mitigate drainage and freezing issues in that area. And that followed a couple of motor vehicle accidents, you recall, including a submerged vehicle this past winter and spring. And so it looks like the town went forward with stonework for drainage and also for silt mitigation into the river. In doing so, it was in front of the area that was the general footpath, okay? And what ended up happening is, even though that footpath may have been kind of solidly packed, yet have stones and roots and things which would otherwise be considered non-compliant, what generated compliance in this area is work performed. And I clarified this this past week with William Joyce, Executive Director of the Mass Architectural Access Board. I had also been in touch with Bob Berger. This situation was unique in that Grafton Land Trust, the work was done on Land Trust property, and so Land Trust is the group expected to basically file for a stay and have 90 days with the Mass Architectural Access Board to come up with a plan to mitigate this issue. Rob Aberg is the president of the Land Trust, and I was back and forth with him, and he wasn't originally a recipient of the emails, but eventually he came into the loop. So it's just a unique situation in that the land trust is now in a situation where they're like, what do we do? Okay, so the Architectural Access Board is either, they would expect some type of reply, either saying it's going to be fixed or asking for a sort of stay of 90 days with which then they can tell the AAB how they're going to remediate this. So I don't know. There's really not a clear answer to this because Land Trust didn't do the work yet. It's on Land Trust. It's on the land right beyond the parking areas. And then Scott indicated also that there's no van accessible sign. That's a paved over area before you enter the wood. So, I mean, that's where it stands right now. I took the liberty to initiate those phone calls outside of the commission's time frame because the clock starts ticking and there's a 14-day time frame that may have already ended for which Land Trust needs to reply to AAB, even though they think it's really a town issue. Architectural Access Board really is not concerned with who did the work, just that it's not non-compliant because work was performed. So few moving parts and parties involved. And I don't know if there's a clear answer as to how this can be addressed. So any comments upon reading the complaint, Christy?
I have two questions as I take notes. Can you please tell me again the name of the president of the Land Trust? I believe you said somebody Aberg.
Yeah, Rob Aberg.
That's what I thought.
ABERG. So.
Yep. I didn't know if it was Ron or Ron. Secondly, this is where I need, and I think we need as a commission, some clarification on who gets to police what, because isn't this Bob's job? I mean, isn't this what he's paid to do?
Well, Bob looks into all these things, and you're right. And so what ends up happening is it's my understanding from discussions with Bob this week that although he can point things out and facilitate things and warn people, it's really not like this. It's my understanding that a lot of this doesn't have a whole lot of teeth. If someone, unlike a ticket where you find someone, he can go out and do a site review and he can, tell someone, all right, this is out of compliance and here's how you could remediate it.
Yeah.
But this one, this is a unique situation. I was willing to take on to better familiarize myself with the AAB guidelines in this respect, because it was a unique situation that it was, and Rob's my neighbor. So I run into him. I was like, you know what, I'll take care of this. He lives on South Street around the bend. I
know Rob. I know Rob. Okay.
Yeah. Rob and Lori with their little dog and so right now, the clock is ticking and may have already ticked too late. I'm thinking someone along the line, the Conservation Commission was apparently involved and was the ones wanting the stonework to be placed in there so that silt wouldn't end up in the I think it's still the Quinsigamon River before it becomes Lake Ripple. So that ended up being loose underfoot, and that's what the compliance issue is. And so it's possible, and again, this would cost money. It's possible that one fix could be, and I pointed this out to Bob Berger and Rob Aberg, could be to make the entrance to the Gummery Wood to the right of those parking spaces. Keep it level. I mean, you could put a packed surface like like stone dust, and then have it bank sharp left, be a little less wide. It was formerly a huge area that's like 20 feet wide, and you just go into the woods. Certainly, money aside, there could be a situation that you could plant some trees beyond where the stone was put down and not advertise that place that was formerly an entrance to be an entrance. But again, someone has to fund this. So Um, I don't know where the funds came from to do the site work that caused this situation. Nor am I familiar with where the funds could come from to mitigate it. Not necessarily by digging up the whole thing and then putting a level path in there. It could be creating a new path to the right of the parking spots and just hooking it far left and then, planting some trees and closing off that area that people were used to entering. So that's where it stands. Yes, Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering for questions like this,
Yeah,
who at the state do we typically interact with to help us answer these questions? And I'm thinking about, we have a fairly complex issue with a number of different stakeholders involved. We've got a
Right.
lot of situations in town where you have town-owned land, but the conservation restriction sits with the, land trust.
right.
So who, for all of these things, who are the enforcement agents and all of that? So
Right.
I'll let Daryl, but
Yeah,
I
Daryl.
I would look to who would give us advice on this.
Okay, Daryl.
Well, this definitely segues into old business, but
Okay.
we do have a connection at state level. And we are going to talk all about that later
Yes.
because he actually, his whole job is to advise committees like ours and to educate people.
Jeff Dugan,
And-
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's almost like using the MASC, Mass Association for School Committees. When you have technical questions and you want an answer from a neutral party, you call them up and they give you lots of good information, because that is their whole job, to be aware of all the laws. So he's like that. And we'll get into what our conversation was with him because I happened to hop on with Roger when he called, had a call with this man.
Yep.
But for right now, I think these letters are definitely important, and our role, I don't think our role, from what I understood, is not to solve the problems, but it's to help get it to the right people, get
Right.
the problems to the right people. Which is very similar to the school committee. School committee can't solve the problem, but they know there's a hierarchy and they get it to the right people.
And Jeff Dugan, yeah, and yes, I know evolving to new business a little bit. Yes, Jeff does sit on the his area sits on the Architectural Access Board.
Yeah.
So he would be a resource. What I'm kind of concerned about is the timeline and that 14-day window to sort of file a 90-day stay, but maybe they'll give some wiggle room. I don't know who the party, so we could talk to Jeff and ask who is the proper party to
Right.
answer this.
I think that's an appropriate phone call to make, especially when, these three complaints definitely look important. So we
Right.
need to make sure they get addressed, and or that we point Scott into the right place. So there's nothing wrong with people sending us complaints or this information.
Right.
We can't exactly solve it. We're like the conduit. Like, okay, these are the people you need to be in touch with. And yes, we can help you with that if you need help. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, just like the school committee, over time, getting lots and lots of issues to deal with, you develop a kind of a protocol for
Yeah.
that hierarchy and who to interact with. So over time, this commission should develop that so that as things come in, we're like, oh, we've seen one of those and, go talk to this person.
Right.
I think there are a lot of complexities with the land trust in particular. And my mind goes to, let's prevent this from happening in the future, where if the town is doing work on land trust property,
Yeah.
the land trust has to be notified that actually that's happening and that, accessibility is addressed in the work. If we
Right.
don't want to be creating new problems.
Right.
Thank you, Matt. I was thinking the exact same thing in advance of the meeting, that that it just seems to be, it could be as simple as a communication issue, that now all the interested parties are at the same table before, in advance of the work. So anyone have an objection with me reaching out to Jeff or?
No, and I mean, we're reaching back out to him anyway after
That's
this
true.
meeting.
Yes, this is true.
But
So,
he's not just for us, he's for any one of you to call. So it's
Yeah.
not just me and Roger that have to call, that are the only people that can call him. Anybody, any one of us can call him and ask questions.
right,
Roger, so my comment just echoes what you and thank you, Matt, for what you just offered too, because I believe that overall this is a communication issue. I mean, there could have been signage at that site to indicate that at this time it's not accessible, but we're working on it, or letting people know on their Facebook page or whatever social media they use. And then the other question in the back of my mind is why didn't, and again, I don't mean to be critical, but you would think that Bob would have a protocol ready to go. Oh, if this is your issue, here, these are the steps you need to take. Here's the timeline. I mean, he should have that resource ready to pull out depending on what the issue coming forward would be. And ready to be at the ready to communicate specific information so that it's compliant in many different areas.
right. And so as far as the forms and the deadlines and the mechanics of approaching the state.
And that's not ours.
No,
Right.
it isn't. But
No, I
it
know.
would be helpful. It would be helpful just
Right.
suggesting it.
Yes, Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, another one of the complaints that came in also was around Roney Park. And again, that's another thing where I wasn't involved in the project back in the day, but again, that seems like we've created a new problem. We built a park and, ADA compliance just wasn't addressed and,
Yeah.
You know what?
Well-
And Matt, one of the things is I originally thought the same thing. However, all right, when you think of Roney Park, it originally was, okay, the flagpole and the plaque within the island, okay? And then it extends to, that's basically the head of Bridge Street. And then it goes to that paved area where there are benches overlooking the river. I didn't realize until I walked that by foot the other night that there is an accessible space to the left. It just, you wouldn't know it. So when you pull in, there seems to be 2 spaces there that are unmarked. It's wide enough for 2 cars to pull in to the left of the flagpole and the island. But the park itself is the totality of that includes the brick area that goes over the bridge that leads to that path toward the Grafton Grill.
okay,
So when you're right before you enter that brick area, to the left is a super wide spot that has an accessible sign, okay? So I think there are 3 things that need to be done. Let people who know that they're pulling into that area, that there is an accessible space to the left, okay? That goes past the mailbox, because there's a private residence that is between the flagpole and the terrace over the river. So the first thing seems to be that there should be signage that directs someone from the street to that space.
I see.
That in the sign needs to be changed from just a regular accessible sign to a van accessible sign. And the proper painted markings need to be done. So
Got
I
it.
think that's probably, and I had spoken with Bob Detoma and not Bob Detoma. Sorry, Bob. He's Bob Berger. Bob Detoma's GCTV. So Bob Berger mentioned that just a quick call to Paul Canoy at the highway could fix these issues. Okay. I originally thought in looking at it that there wasn't an accessible space. Now, even though that space is farther away to the flagpole, it's actually closer to just as many attractions of that park. So in my mind, I think that's considered a collective parking area. I don't know if anyone would consider it 2 separate parking areas.
Got it.
I don't think there needs to be a separate accessible space immediately adjacent to the flagpole and plaque. I think the whole park is the park that runs from the flagpole all the way across the river to that footpath, to the Grafton Grill. So, yeah, I mean, I could just reach out and shoot a quick email to Paul Canoyer about that. Or maybe that's Bob Berger's responsibility, you know? But, you know, I could shoot it. I mean, it's just as easy for me to shoot an email to Paul to outline the things that I guess were supposed to be done, but may not have, you know, been completed. Okay. Any other comments or concerns about the Roney Park issue, item 2B? All right. And then the third issue at 2C is parts 1 and 2. Scott Ricker did file complaints regarding accessible parking at the 122 pub at 215 Worcester Street, North Grafton, and Post Office Pub at 1 Ray Street, North Grafton, that they somehow impeded with their outdoor tent seating because of coronavirus, that their dining setup encroached upon the accessibility, the accessible spots. And so Bob Berger did send emails to both those establishments. And then Brian Fitzgerald at 122 Pub sent an email to Scott reaching out to him to see if they could work together to fix that issue. Okay. But then the lifespan of that whole area is set for demolition soon anyway. But Brian Fitzgerald was more than amenable to address the issue, however long that business would be on that site. So, so that's where so I don't think we need to do anything on item C. Does anyone have any comments on item C regarding those two businesses? Yes, Matt.
Yeah, just I'd agree with what you said. That seems to me to be a Bob Berger enforcement issue and, you know, private business owners working with Bob. So I don't think there's anything for us to do.
Okay. What I'm going to do is, if without objection, I know that on 3, the ADA self-eval, and Matt, thank you for reaching out and putting this specific item on the agenda regarding discussion and agreement on working group and process for continuing the breakdown of Grafton's self-evaluation and transition plan. What I'd like to do is, because Jen Anderson is in the queue, go back to this and go straight to item 4. Anyone object to that? Okay.
Nope, go for it.
All right. So item 4, Recreation Department CPC, which stands for Community Preservation Committee, application for October 2020 town meeting. The project proposal being ADA accessible routes and surfacing in parks and playgrounds. And that was submitted by Jen Anderson, our director of the Recreation Department. So, Jen, how are you?
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. So I will ask everyone before Jen, before you speak, I'm just gonna open up to the meeting packet. And I printed, what's in your meeting packet, folks, is the entirety of what's now on the CPC website in advance of their meeting next Thursday, August 27th. So, all right, it's all yours, Jen.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know we talked about what we're doing to address the plan in general. I didn't know how much you wanted me to speak to what it meant for this project specifically, or people were familiar with it and just want me to answer questions. You know, is there a direction you wanted to?
Well, I know that, and I'll mention this to the rest of the commission, that Jen had reached out to earlier to see, she had proposed the possibility of submitting to the commission draft language regarding if we voted in the affirmative to support the final application, which is on 8/27 next Thursday, what that wording could look like, okay? And what my reply to Jen was that, in my opinion, such draft wording really didn't need to be lengthy or necessarily need to be submitted ahead of time. I cited how even some of the finance committee recommendations to town meeting on some, significant matters aren't always in great detail. So I think at a high level, what Jen was looking for is something that would support the application, even if it were, brief. That it would be one more piece that someone in town was behind this particular application. So I know that when you came before us last time, it didn't include the narrative or the pictures and everything. So thank you for having brought it all together so that we can see this as a whole, not only the RFP, but a narrative of what the work was to be done, as well as the pictures of what are by and large creating solid, stable paths around perimeters and 2 structures, as well as putting that sort of contiguous rubber matting that I guess you mentioned, Jen, earlier, has like a 10-year lifespan. That seems to comprise most of the work. And then there are some other items. So I guess, Jen, was that a cue for you to reach out to the commission for comments? Does anyone have any comments or questions? I know Jen covered some of this at recent meetings. Yes, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. To Jen, thanks so much for taking this on. I know that you guys have done a lot of work really, really quickly to put this all together, and I just want to thank you for putting the time in to do this. It looks like a considerable amount of work's gone into the application, and I think it's really great that you guys are taking this on in such a serious way, and it's really nice to see a report being developed for ADA compliance, and then just you leading the recreation department have just really taken this on and embraced it. So I think it's great. I definitely am in full support of the CPC application. I'm also wondering, is there anything that we can do to sort of lend some support for your park grant application as well? Because it's something that this commission certainly should be supporting anybody in town, but particularly somebody who's really taking a lead and being proactive about trying to get ahead of this. So if there's anything that we can do regards to that, I think that's great. As I'm reading the application, it looks like you're going to be left with about 50,000 left after doing some of the contract work. So you're going to be putting that towards the estimated $300,000 in work, and your request really is for the rest of it. So I guess want to confirm that 250 will be less if we get the park grant or other monies that become available. Is that true?
Yeah, and so we've done some additional, more detailed quoting since this, and I'll be speaking with Joanne Duncan tomorrow just to see what I should, or can add to an addendum to it, the application. But I mean, Joanne did suggest, and it makes sense that for the CPC application for them to consider that your disability commission would just give that, yes, we're behind it, thumbs up. So like Roger said, just a, yep, this is in accordance with the transition plan, and we're for it, 2-sentence thing. But again, that same sort of thing that I could apply for the park grant, I'd also be applying for, and I know this is on your agenda item 2, so I want to make sure that not other people are doing this, and we're not being, parallel in applying for the Mass Office of Disability grant. So each of those are up to $100,000 grants.
No,
and we would
250.
have, excuse me?
250.
250 is the MOD grant?
Yeah, MOD grant is up to 250, and the cool thing this year is that they're not requiring it to be matching funds. They let up on that.
Yeah,
They
no,
will
so I
get-
wasn't matching. What I had seen just maybe like 2 weeks ago was 100. So if you saw 250, by all means, send it my way. So,
Yeah,
but either way, so I mean, yeah, 100, if we got up to 100 from the park, it looks like, for the MOD would be 100. We would have at least 50,000 that we're bringing to the table, and our more detailed quotes, since this application has actually come in a little bit less. So if all that goes through, that means no CPC money would be used at all, but they would be helping us, front it, and then we would reimburse them for that.
right, right. And
Fantastic.
So on this, when you had mentioned, I mean, there are other entities. I know that we had applied as a municipality in our first meeting as reconstituted back on September 19th of 2019. Becca Meekins came before our commission to present the proposal for the upgrades on the ramps behind the municipal center for 50,000. So I know I'm jumping ahead of myself and not speaking about rec, but since you brought up the possibility of competing grants, I mean, it certainly makes sense that the town resubmit the request for that unless that's being expended with not having been awarded last December. So there could be other parties in town that will seek those funds for one or more projects. So I can't say, Jen, that you'll be the only applicant within Grafton for this MOD grant. So
No, that's
Yeah.
not. It's another obviously avenue that we can
Right.
take.
Oh, absolutely.
And hopefully will, but
All right. And so, since you're in front of us and you had mentioned, the grant program, so because those have to be done by early October, it would behoove you to have that grant ready for submission for us to weigh on and either be a co-applicant or, consider a letter of endorsement at our next meeting in September. So was that your plan to have that ready for within that timeline for the
well,
MOD grant?
I mean, with you meeting maybe the third week of September, I mean, I think the deadline for the grant's like October 9th or something. So
Correct. And unless we squeezed in a meeting, our schedule of once a month would force us to address, this issue during our meeting, our regularly scheduled meeting would be September 17th, Thursday.
And that's why I didn't know if the letter kind of a recommendation would be able to be one tool that would be able to be used in all three places between the park grant, MOD grant, and CPC. So when drafting that, when you guys are drafting that, to try to keep that in mind if it can encompass,
So is this identical? In other words, for the MOD grant, how much are you requesting and for what parks is it?
Well, I was because last I saw was 100,000. That's what I was going to be asking for. But if you're 250, then yeah, we're going to go for the whole buckaroo.
Yeah, and we may be ahead of ourselves, and it may be kind of, for lack of a better term, an oddity to have an all-encompassing letter, Mr. Often.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll let the rest of the commission speak on this, but I think all of us support in principle, letters of advocacy for all of these applications. I'd like to just make a motion that we authorize our chair to go ahead and draft letters of support for each of these applications as they're available from the rec department. I think that's probably the best way to do it, and I trust that you'll write a good recommendation.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, motion made by Mr. Offen, seconded by Ms. Reining for the chair, made to draft a letter, letters of support regarding, CPC, Mass Office on Disability, and park grant as they become available.
Roger, is the park grant the third grant?
Yes.
Okay.
So what does it call? Is it National Park Grant? Does it have a more formal name, Jen? Not that we need to be as formal.
I mean, how detailed do you think these letters need to be, Jen?
That's, I haven't, and I was just speaking on mute, but,
I
I haven't delved further into the MOD grant. I previously delved into the park grant for the super park before, and I don't think it needs to be that's why I think the statement can be the same, but it's just addressing each of the
Yeah.
letter, you know, who
Yeah.
it's going to separate.
So let me ask
You
you
know what?
this.
We
Oh,
can
yeah.
ask, Roger, we can pose that to Jeff too, if there's confusion on what needs to be written, because I'm envisioning just a statement, you know, saying we have looked at these documents and that the Disability Commission is in support of these projects.
Okay,
It says specifically on the MOD grant, like if you have a disability commission, you're going to get, you know, it's kind of like a point where you're going to get more because you have that. And then obviously a letter of
Gotcha.
support.
Yep.
So I don't think it needs to be, it's just the fact that there's a commission exists
Yeah.
and you got to be behind it. So
And that
Okay.
we sign, yep, and give it to you.
all,
Great.
all extra points in the process.
so that would be addressed to you, Jen?
To whom it makes.
I have to look at it, probably be addressing yeah, there's contact names for each grant that you probably,
Okay,
for that. But CPC, and CPC would be to the chair, John Stevens,
right,
for that.
okay. All right, so motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. Yeah, just one last thing, I guess. It always helps with these grant applications if they're state grants, that we get advocacy from either, you know, somebody that we know at the state, at a minimum, our state rep. So we certainly should reach out to Mr. Meridian and ask him to, you know, bring our projects to the granting authorities and be advocating for us as well.
Okay,
Yeah, and so the first two, just so you can, if you need to, whatever, prioritize it. I mean, CPC, you know, is next week and they'll be voting on this project for town meeting.
right.
MOD grant is due by the end of October. The park
Actually,
grant.
it's beginning of October.
Beginning of October. But the park grant, their round wouldn't begin again until next July. And so we would only do that if we got approval at town meeting, you know, to go forward with that. So that would be a wait and see.
All right, so let me ask the commission. I guess I would ask for unanimous consent if the Disability Commission wants to remove the reference to the park grant from this motion, and just leave it to CPC and MOD if this isn't going to be until next July. What is everyone's thought on that? Daryl?
I say we need to get the first two done and then get the second one, the third one, the one for next year done at some point in time.
Okay. Is everyone in agreement then that the motion is by unanimous consent, the motion is amended to delete the reference to the park grant in this letter?
No, just keep it.
Keep
Oh.
it. Keep
Oh,
it.
okay.
I think like what Matt said, it's not for me to speak, but he just said as you know, as each of these.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, yes, as they become available. Okay,
You got it.
so it's open-ended. Okay. All right, then we'll keep that in there. Sorry for the misunderstanding. So any further, all right. Ms.
And
Reiner.
I'm wondering if anybody else on the commission wants to be in charge of getting a hold of Dave Meridian or Mike Moore for help.
Mr. Often,
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So,
thank you so much, man.
yeah, Roger, if you just want to refer those applications to me as they come through, I'm happy to make that connection.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. All right, motion made and second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. Daryl Reining,
I,
Christy Proctor,
Aye.
Matt Often,
Often I.
Catherine Dorr,
Aye.
Roger Trahan, I declare the motion carried unanimously 5-0. Okay, Jen, one step closer.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I know that your transition, you kind of went over the transition, skipped over. I don't know what part of the discussion of the transition plan you're looking to do, but I'm happy to give kind of our update as well about everything else. that we're
Sure.
doing. But also just to clarify, make sure everyone understands what the CPC application is about. And we're obviously meeting, trying to check off all of the items in the transition plan. But I mean, CPC is going to create some, they approve that, which seems like it's going that way. And then hopefully town meeting would approve that, but create some really great opportunities and overdue, in our parks and playgrounds. So those pictures, you should have seen the narrative before, but we were able to add the pictures of what the material was going to look like in the playgrounds.
Mhm.
We are, instead of a bonded wood carpet, looking at a combination of asphalt walkways and some of these additional matting in the playground for some shorter, maybe less traveled areas to reduce the cost, and spend some time with a really great, working with a consultant and really great contractor and laying all of these projects out. So we really finally get down to the nitty gritty of what it needs to happen at each of those locations to meet these requirements, and it's looking really great. But otherwise, again, working on all of the other needs in all of the other parks regarding plumbing and contracting and smaller handyman work, and a lot has already been accomplished. I'm working with this really great guy, Gary Morrison from town, who's been nice enough to reduce his rate because he knows what he's doing, and he's from town and doing it for the town, and so that's been really helpful. But signage and knobs and grab bars and moving toilet paper dispensers and the pressure on the self-closing hinges of doors, and so he's done a lot of those things already. We're still trying to find a contractor to do some of the things like adjusting counter heights, at Silver Lake that need to be done, but this project with CPC is going to get us the paved parking spots and the paved walkways, and dealing with the curb cuts and all those sorts of things, adding more handicap swings to some of our locations as well. And got a plumber almost lined up to deal with some of the plumbing things we need to address at some locations as well. And DPW has restriped Norcross Park, so they've added a van spacing there and restriped that, and they're waiting on a signage for a van accessible sign there, and sent some stuff their way about things like that they can hopefully address at both Ferry and Airport. I've also sent to Paul Canoyer the items at Mill Villages, so he's aware. Daryl, the park superintendent, is out on injury for a little while, so they seem to have a little bit opening for a couple of things, and so I sent him Mill Villages, so hopefully he'll check that off too. So we're really making a lot of progress.
Thank you. I'm surprised in the best way of all the progress you've made on these items. Mr. Offen, you had a question?
Yeah, Jen, I just wondering if the DPW guys were able to help at all with some of the signage. I know they've made some of the other signage in town for various things, and just thinking of cost.
Yeah, they'll definitely be doing the handicap in the van accessible parking signs. A lot of the signage that needed to be dealt with were had to include the tactile as well, and so those we ordered all of those
Got
things.
it. Makes sense. And the other question that I had was just around, so you've talked a little bit about plumbing. Is that in the transition plan, there's a lot around, kind of restroom type facilities. Is that mostly what that's addressing with the plumbing?
Yeah, some of it's like the water closets are too close to the wall, or I'm trying to think of plumber specific, which I can pull up. We had to cover the sink piping underneath the ADA sinks, but we had the handyman do that. A lot of it's moving the water, the toilets are such from the walls. It's only like 5 or 6 things that we have to actually hire a plumber for, but they kind of wanted to see because they could be detailed. They could not. But
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And I had a question for you, Jen, on Norcross, okay? If everyone could turn to Norcross, the little mini Fenway, the picture of the overhead of the baseball diamond, there are 3 yellow, a little tiny path, and then 2 longer paths. I know the longer path to the right of the first baseline is going from the main walkway all the way to the batting cages out back behind the right field wall. And I know that there's a little teeny path that goes from the main walkway to the basketball courts, okay? But before you do, when you first enter, Jen, the park, there's a left to right line. And I know that I was up there with my son Blake, and I took a close watch of what those went to. And they're the benches that were part of an Eagle Scout project recently in support of some local businesses, where there's 3 benches, 1 to the left under a tree, and then 2 to the right under those trees. And that's what I'm understanding. The benches are on concrete slabs, but they're only accessible by grass right now. What I was wondering though is what may have been inadvertently left out is way to the left along the left field line is another bench. There were 4 benches in total. So this is bench sitting out in the sort of in no man's land that probably could be moved versus having a concrete path. Just having this whole concrete walkway and expenditure just to lead to 1 bench. Okay. So I don't know if that was an oversight or whether there was a plan to move that lone bench that is way out there to the left, because it's no different from the other benches that caused that first yellow line to exist in the first place, because those 3 benches are not accessible by any solid footpath other than grass.
yeah, I definitely, I guess, have missed that bench in left field, number 1. But number 2, in all of this, I've kind of got 2 different tracks of information. One is that I only need to really get you to like 1
Right.
dugout of 1 field in 1 facility,
Okay,
type thing. So
gotcha.
right now I've even eliminated one of those paths to those benches, and we're going to go to the bench on the right because it's near the basketball court.
Okay,
For example. So, and we talked about, that they were like, well, do we move them? And it's like, yeah, but it's right under this tree. You want the shade. This one's by the basketball court. Let's go there. So
Okay.
I would have to look at what that bench is, and I guess it's what it's accessing, right? Like if there's not another opportunity for them to.
the bench actually faces, it doesn't even face toward the left field line. So it's not like you're looking from a far distance at any ball game. It's just, it was part of an Eagle Scout project where there were 4 benches, and it seemed like that was just one place where it was decided to be put. I know that, Jen, you sometimes have like rec, like soccer or things where if a parent were watching their kids in a rec, a younger rec league or whatever, or program, they could use that bench as a viewing point. And so, all of those benches, as long as 2 out of the 4 are accessible, I guess that would suffice. Is that what you?
Yeah, well, I have to see where it is. Like, they said the plan says at Silver Lake, or so even though I had an ADA picnic table up on the beach along the other picnic tables, there's a set of picnic tables under the pavilion. So I need to also, because that's a separate amenity, I need to put an ADA picnic table in a route to the pavilion as well.
Okay,
Because it's offering something different than what it was, from the
Okay.
beach. So I'd have to see what that bench is to get a visual on,
Right.
if it's offering something different than, right? If I'm understanding what I'm,
yes, in other words, okay, so when you walk down the footpath and those aluminum bleachers are to your left,
Mhm.
and you're sitting on the bleachers, look to the far left along, there's a bunch of trees. And it's sitting out there all by its lonesome. So I just wanted to call your attention to that.
yeah, no, I sorry.
No, that's okay. It's one bench, and I would, I mean, it was an awesome project, but it just seems to be kind of out of the way compared to the other three. That's all. All right.
And I just have a quick comment, Jen. I really applaud all the work you're doing on this. And just to help strengthen your application, one of the things that's really interesting about accommodation is that you're usually trying to figure out a percentage. Like if 1 in 5 people have a disability, do you want to have 1 in 5 apparatuses or anything accessible? But if you kind of marry the thought of accessibility with being user-friendly, then you reach a much wider audience. So if you can use some of the language for being user-friendly, because not only will people with disabilities have more access, the people who accompany people with disabilities, or people who technically don't have a disability, but they're using a stroller, for example, and pushing someone along or around the park, like the outline at Airport Park. So think about that user friendliness angle, that it's not just the disability, because I know that's a great marker to aim for, and I'm not disparaging that, but also consider just the other angle of user friendliness, because it's really making it accessible to everyone, not just people with disabilities.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's you can really look at with Airport Park, because once you look at what you're looking to connect, and there's a gap between the field on the left and the batting cage in the middle of about 50 feet, and we're kind of going, let's make this a full amenity and connect the whole thing and make it a full walk loop, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely trying to think in that manner in all of it.
And thank you, Jen. It's an excellent thought process, because I
Yeah.
know when you're attending kids' games, there's people of different ages where the younger child, whatever, may be bored. You want to take the kid for a walk, and whether someone has a stroller or maybe not as mobile, but they're still ambulatory, they could take a walk back and forth, with someone, or it's kind of neat that you're thinking out of the box and going the extra step.
Well, it surprised me. It started at Silver Lake 2 years ago when we put down the access, a beach mat from the parking lot to behind the concession stand. That was the lesser grade, and so the best mobility we could offer to people at that point. But everyone else who had a stroller and a beach bag they wanted to roll up and everything was using it. So, I was like, oh, okay, I got, and so you can see that. So yeah, this is gonna, obviously usability for everyone.
Awesome. Anyone else have any questions on this particular project? And then while we have your attention, this is going to be sort of musical chairs regarding the agenda. While you're still with us, 6B, Grafton celebrates the holidays 2020. I know this is under old business in it, but it was revisiting accessibility of venues, including accommodations for those with sensory issues. And Jen had come to me asking, what the committee, what the commission felt would be some questions that she would incorporate in that initial letter. And I had given her some polite pushback on it. Behind the scenes, I couldn't poll my committee because a serial conversation would be a deliberation and open meeting violation if I were to do it. And Jen, you accurately pointed out that there were probably a couple of us, and only a couple of us, who were really, really jumping into that particular issue regarding the various venues. But, you know, the commission has different members now, and so you have, it's my understanding, sent out the initial letter for 2020, and I haven't seen a copy of that. What does that look like, and what is the remaining piece regarding accessibility, I guess, that you may be looking for? And maybe that's a better question for the commission regarding venues that actually have nothing, that sort of like our venues that are quiet zones, if someone's having a difficult time.
Yeah, and again, I think this year, I know this year at this point is going to be a different matter completely than it has in the past, but still trying to understand and grasp that language you guys are looking for in the needs you're trying to meet. Like I said, I know it's not just sensory, but Roger, I think you said it, I guess accessibility as well. So just understanding going forward what that is, and if there's an opportunity to figure out this year. So yeah, I reached out to everyone just in general saying, hey, you guys, I know that you've got, this has been a tough go and you've got a million things to think about. And this is probably the last thing you want to think about, but give me some ideas of what your thoughts are on if your location can still occur, how you're going to revamp it. Do we do it over a weekend? Do we do it over a week? Do we line up with Shop Grafton Mass campaign and you know, is it a 2 weeks type thing? So it's smaller events throughout, or is it you give me a promotional item or a promotion you're running over a course of time, and we put together an event in a bag and it's takeaway. Is it a people buy tickets to enter, so it's a limited capacity, or if we run the train at Unibank, it's a time thing and they can clean in between. So I've got a handful, maybe less than 10 responses. The Bushel and Pex are like, hey, we're ready to go. Our chicken noodle soup is in a to-go cup and it's going to stay the same. And here you go. Home Fields and Santa's like, no way, that's never going to happen.
Yes.
The library is going to run like some virtual programming and partake in the bag, and Studio 79 is way too small, but hey, can we think of something else? So just trying to think out of this box. I think it's going to be a hybrid event. Like I'm just telling people, I'm not expecting you to commit. Like if you can't have your in-person event to not, Studio 79's like, we're out, we can't have an in-person event. It's like, well, no, what can you offer? We're going to put together, we're thinking of doing like a window decorating contest between businesses or homes, and people would give us their address and we'll create a map and people can drive around and they'll vote. And so what can happen that day specifically would be something like that, but stuff that could occur throughout. So because I don't think it's going to be as much of that in person, and it's not going to be Santa and trains and, overwhelmingly amounts of people that, people with sensory issues or accessibility issues would have to, because it's just not going to exist. But just so I can get comfortable with that language, make sure I know what, and start incorporating that into what we're planning, and start working with businesses on, and they can start doing the same.
Yes, Christy.
So Jen, I would just suggest you just have a few check boxes and ask them what, in the planning of their event, which accommodation will they be able to offer, and then just use those, make an icon and place them in your literature, so that way they're not taking a lot of space, and then have your icon be the visual signage, and then have a code. For example, you can ask, is your location mobility or wheelchair accessible?
Well, so I think if you just give me that language you're looking for, you're saying
I'd be happy to. And if you're going to host a virtual event, will it be pre-recorded and have closed captioning? Just very easy things.
No, that's good. Yeah, the closed captioning I wouldn't have thought of. So perfect. That's what I'm.
And the other thing, Jen, is that, and if I recall correctly, a lot, if the coronavirus had never happened and this was all indoors, it isn't only about whether the outside is accessible, but people have, in order to cram in as many people as possible, there are various venues that, because everything's crammed with tables and chairs, that even if someone can get into the building, that in their attempt to accommodate as many people as possible, they have made it in certain spaces inside inaccessible because tables are all and chairs are all piled up and no one can really get around. And so absent a formal evaluation of what the venue will look like once it's set up, it's hard to sort of put that little universal mobility icon on the Grafton Celebrates the Holidays brochure. I think that's what we may have gotten a little bit hung up on in our discussions last year about what it would take to really truly accurately identify which venues are accessible, not only by entrance, but in the way they'd be eventually set up in their interior.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, I mean, between churches and schools, but then you look at, you know, you're going from a Holden Farm to a Willard Clock House to I mean, there's
Right.
a lot on there that
Right.
are a tough go.
So, I mean, what's the committee's thought as far as what additional language or advice we can give to Jen to incorporate into her communications with businesses regarding accessibility? Yes, Ms. Reining. Your sound.
Sorry. I'm just wondering, thinking about Jeff Duggan, what expertise do we have on our panel that could help Jen? Somebody who knows, like maybe Christy Proctor wants to, you know, draft something with the language that we're looking for, and email Jen so that she knows.
Right. And I know that Missy
Roger, I
Lackey,
didn't mean to mislead, like whatever. I just thought if you wanted the whole commission behind that, I get that. I just thought in the short meantime, I was just trying to say, give me those couple of words that I can just.
right, and I know, and I wasn't trying to give you a hard,
You
I
know,
wasn't trying to give you a hard time, but there's a very tiptoe aspect to someone within the commission trying to poll people outside of the actual meeting. Although it may, however well-intentioned, we run afoul of the open meeting law if a serial conversation occurs where we've among a quorum among 4 or more members. And so that's, yeah. So Daryl.
Only if you are emailing all of us at once and expect us all to answer the exact same email does a serial conversation happen. If you individually email each person asking for their input, that is not a serial conversation.
All right. And maybe I'm
Because
being,
none of us are reading what the other person is saying.
okay.
We're not collaborating on it. We're not voting on it. And no decisions are made. So you can then bring those ideas forth.
Right. And Jen, you had pointed that out to me, and I
that's why I just,
politely
that's why I didn't want you, Mike, to think that I wasn't trying, you know.
No. And I was taking a more strict approach to it. So I'll just, you know, in the future, I'll just be more mindful of and identify what is it, the fine line between serial conversation or not, because it sounds like if that wouldn't have been a serial conversation, then I might have held you back a little, Jen, on being able to incorporate those things in your initial letter. But Christy, so you'll do some things. Christy, would you mind reaching out to Missy Lackey? Missy had some concern with some of the sensory issues, and I know that she wouldn't want to be left out of this area of input.
I'd be happy to.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions on Grafton Celebrates the Holidays, item 6B, taken out of order? All right, thank you, Jen, for all your time and great work. Daryl?
Thanks, guys.
Oh, she's waving. All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
wait,
Jen.
can I, wait, Jen, one more thing. So Roger, can I please email Jen? And should I Just
Yeah.
do it individually? Okay, perfect. Just want to clarify before Jen leaves. So Jen, not tomorrow, but hopefully next week I'll have it out. I'll give you some ideas. And please know I totally respect the job you do. So I'm just making some generalized suggestions and then we can go from there.
Yeah, we're still just getting responses from people. It's only been like 2 weeks. We'll really have to decide by the end of September how it's all gonna go. I do know you guys are the first to know that there's not going to be a tree lighting this year because there will not be a tree.
There's no tree.
No,
we
there's a tree. It's 4 feet tall. It's like the Charlie
wait
Brown
for
tree. that
Charlie
just
Brown
got
tree.
That was the first year we started using a real tree under the gazebo in 2015. And so, yeah, the intention was in, I don't know what, 30 years, we'll have a replacement, but nature took a different course.
Wow.
And so we're going to wait for the historic renovation project to happen. There's a lot involved with that for that.
Sure.
But so again, trying to figure out the other things that we can still bring to the table for this. So will be a ongoing working matter over the next month, but pieces will still happen in some form, I promise.
All right.
Well, Jen,
Thank
just
you.
to let you know, I'm not spilling any beans in the notes about these plans because I know how people sometimes like to start gossip trains off meeting minutes. So I'm just talking about how you discuss new ideas to host Grafton Celebrates the Holidays. 'Cause
That's right. It will be leaked eventually somehow. So I'm not
I know,
worried.
but I appreciate all you're doing because
Thank you.
you know, there's just so much speculation. Everything changes. The new normal is, and people tend to really want to have things stay the same. So I'm going to just not even go
Oh,
there
yeah,
with
we're
it.
still trying to be able to offer people that something that the same. So
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jen. Okay, so, all right, so we have, this, a few more items on the agenda. So, I'm just gonna quickly jump to the easiest one, out of order. 5, the minutes for May 21st and 7/16, will be deferred. Daryl, are you there?
Yep,
All
sorry.
right. All
Yes,
right, so you'll have those at our September meeting?
yes, I will.
All right, so as soon as you get them, you can just email them to us instead of waiting for me to post the.
Yep, I'll do that. I'll
Thank you
email them.
so
to
much.
everyone.
All right, so getting back to, all right, back in order, 3, Grafton ADA Self-Eval and Transition Plan. Discussion and agreement on working group and process for continuing the breakdown of Grafton Self-Eval and Transition Plan. Certainly Jen Anderson is really, really going the extra mile to really tackle a lot of that. The Parks and Rec piece combined was about 40 pages. I know some parks and such, she had indicated, were really not under her purview or command. But the ones that are being tackled, not only the big items, but a lot of the handrail items and whatever, some of the plumbing issues and things like that. So, revisiting the whole document, I know that we had previously identified various folks who either had an interest in or expertise in tackling the various items regarding who would tackle what, okay? And so looking back at this, I'm looking back at a document that was probably way earlier, maybe January, it may have been February workshop meeting, whereby it was highlighted in yellow, commission member and town department, and that actually, at the time, Donna Stock was public safety, fire stations, polling places, and Bob Perla was Mill Villages Park, Town Common, and Town Website. And he had already, he was on the Mill Villages Park, or was currently on the Mill Villages Park. And so I'm not going to say we're entirely back at square one, but there's some gaps there due to Donna Stark's departure and Bob Perla's upcoming departure, and now Matt coming on board, that kind of have us revisiting this thing. And rather than get into the weeds, I'm thinking that it might start with just quick letters that have not yet occurred, either through the interim town administrator who is yet to be come on board, or Becca Meekins, to send out brief emails to say, either for the first time or as a reminder, here's an ADA transition plan. Here's what falls under, you. Could you read it and give us a comment? Yes, Daryl.
So I guess I had a conversation with Matt Often, and we were trying to think about what would be the easiest way to organize this whole process, because we seem to be spinning. So we were going to propose a working group to just
Okay.
tackle some kind of a format that we could easily break the whole thing down and then figure out what department goes where and give it to the people, like just listing out the bones, right, Matt? Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah, we have a plan,
Yep.
but it's a very large monolithic document. Jen's been able to sort of take the pieces that fall under her and break it down, and she's had the I guess the time and resources to be able to really pick it apart and start doing some planning. I think for everybody else, the most value that this commission can provide is for us to take that monolithic report, break it apart, figure out kind of which areas it falls into, and then we can be in a situation where I say, okay, I'll take police, fire department, and polling places, and we've identified within the report what's required. So I'm going to go to those departments and I'm going to say, here's what we think.
Yeah.
Jen Anderson, you had a question?
Couple comments, I guess. One is just so you know, the Mill Villages list is extremely short, extremely can be done internally. Basically, I'm taking care of all the picnic. I'm dealing with the picnic tables there, as I am in all of the other locations. And I think a sign. I think the solution is maybe just going to be move a sign versus trying to create a pathway. We have to create a pad by a bench and I think something else. So I just want you to know that that's in the hands of DPW at this point, and I think can be addressed internally. So I am kind of trying to liaise on that. I did also look at the town common list, and a lot of that stuff is not going to make sense to even try to tackle right now until the renovation project is done. So I think that's something you guys can probably not,
Okay.
put on hold.
Yeah.
And I think just sorry, Joe, I one more comment, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of people's concerns obviously is funding, right? So we had a great funding opportunity for not running our beach this year, and we were able to transfer those funds. So, when you talk to Skip Courier from Nelson Park, they got their budget completely. They have $0 this year. So I think people would just be looking for some direction as to how to tackle that. So if you guys maybe it's you guys, I don't know, who make that kind of master plan of what we're going to apply for through MOD every year, for example. So we're not just all singularly on our own path. It's somehow what needs to be addressed and what can we apply for MOD as a town, this year.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a really good suggestion, a master plan like that. I'm not sure if that is in our purview or not, or if that is, I think, basically, the last time when Christy and I talked to Tim, he wanted things broken down, and I don't know if a new town administrator would want it like this either, but broken down and organized so each department understood A, that there are all these things that need to be fixed. B, that each department needs to decide, I think, or the town needs to decide, like, what are we gonna spend our money on? But people first and foremost need to be aware. I mean, you are like the gold standard, Jen. You're awesome.
Yes.
Dear, oh dear. Well, yeah, when I reached out to Skip at Nelson, because I started looking through his list and I said, hey, I'm working with this really great guy. If you want to start knocking off some of these, like tactile signage and blah, 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 like a handyman guy. And he was like, I haven't even seen this. No one's even,
Right.
like he didn't have a clue. Then he's like, I don't even have any money. And Nelson, and the library's closed. So what do we,
Well-
I'm like, no, that's the point. This is the
Right.
time you can do it, but $0. So again, like, return. I did initially spend a significant amount of time taking all 6 of our locations and ranking them by what the priority one was, and then the feasibility to try to go that way. And then when we had this opportunity to say, okay, now we're going to categorize this into plumbing and contracting and DPW and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. So, but I did originally do that sort of the sorting between the priority and the feasibility, which
Right,
which,
and
which is big for all. But you look at Veterans Hall and Senior Center, South Grafton Community House, Nelson Park. No one else probably. So yeah, getting that's something you guys take on, whatever it is, to understand what it is we need, what is most important and things to tackle in each.
And that's exactly kind of what we were asked to do, like to rank and make everyone aware. So originally before COVID, we were going to start meeting with the whole town departments to help them understand what this report is, what it means, why is it important. And then the next part would be breaking the whole thing down and giving the departments their checklists, I guess you could say, so that everybody understands what needs to come up to code, and we need to prioritize the things. We need to prioritize probably according to money, because we don't have any.
Yeah.
So Daryl and Matt, what would this working group look like? It would be a subcommittee, or are we talking 2 people? Or-
I think it's up for discussion. My thinking was that it just would be a really awkward thing to try to go through such a long report with the entire commission, and it might
Right.
make sense to just, I guess subcommittee probably is more appropriate. I'm happy for it to be a posted public meeting. But it's probably not something that the entire commission needs to do. Really, it's kind of a mechanical process of going through the document, breaking it down, and then just figuring out essentially how it can be organized in the most effective way to be able to then go to the departments and say, here's what we think are your priority projects that were identified in the study. Here's some potential funding sources for these things, to be able to have that level of conversation and just make it easier for everybody, because it's just going to be really challenging, I think, if we just refer back to this giant document. I think it's this commission's work to really make it better organized and prioritized to help the town out.
Right. And so I mean, I don't know who has interest in doing that, whoever has really good organizational skills, because I'm automatically thinking in Word doc or in Excel spreadsheet, and then presenting that to the commission. So
Well, there is a Word document of this.
yeah,
this-
there's a Word doc, but I'm thinking checklist,
Checklist.
Excel
Excel, yeah.
spreadsheet, handout, something, 1 page, 2 page.
It's got to be it's got to be Excel.
Yeah, it has to. I think so. Jen, I think you started doing this. You right, for your piece?
No, I did. I did get the Word document, and I did take everything and put it in Excel. Like I said initially, all rent, and they have the numbers of their priority and their feasibility, and I overall ranked it,
They do.
and then I ranked it by each location. But that that took a lot of time. So I think what you guys did before, I mean, and Roger, and I think what you with Bob saying, you're saying he was kind of town common, the Mill Villages, and Donna was whatever, and Roger, you said you're kind of the rec liaison. I'm wondering if that's how you guys look at it. So someone's really familiar throughout the whole process of what a specific person's doing. So it is that divvy up, and maybe each of you take 3 or 4 locations and work with those people on that document and those people directly. So you're really,
I think that's step 2. After things get put in a way that's simple. So.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think, Jen, you did all of the work that probably this commission should have done, at least in a rudimentary form, before you were presented with the large document. So thank you for doing that. And I think we'll take your kind of lead on the work that you did. We could, say that I'll take, police, fire, and polling places, and I'm gonna take out of the document those things that reference those kind of areas of town, and put those into an easier format for those departments. But I think what we'll end up with then is, 4 or 5 different versions of that type of document, and it just would be, I think it's better if we take the whole document aside from what you've already done. And maybe some of the other things that you've already kind of addressed, Mill Villages and the town common, take everything else and just go through the document and pull it out and prioritize it and put it in that spreadsheet format. So I guess that's all I'm suggesting is that we just.
No, I was just suggesting if a smaller bites, because it sounds like whoever is doing this is going to be taking on a lot.
Well, this is the plan though. Like we have this Word document plan now, and I guess observation of how we've been working so far is we've got this big document that really needs to be prioritized, and we need to talk about funding and who's going to do what and be responsible for that. So we need to kind of do that before we hand it off to the departments. And we can't really do it in our monthly meetings. It feels to me like we need to, for a few weeks, maybe just get together a couple hours a week to just chunk through the report and see where we can get to with it, to then come back to the commission and say, here's what we did. And maybe, the subgroup doesn't even prioritize. It just sucks the information out and then brings it to the commission to be prioritized.
Yeah.
Yeah, well-
Actually, Matt, there are priorities set in the document,
Yep.
which is helpful, I think. But and then, honestly, once these things go to each department, we aren't responsible for each department organizing it the way they need to. You know what I mean?
I do.
So we can't. We're not going to dictate. We just say, here it is. Here's your big picture. This is your department. These things fall under you. We are here to help. In any way we can. Here's the organization of this for your department. You guys need to talk about this and think about what you're going to do.
And I agree with Daryl in this, and let me bounce this off the committee. So as much as we would want to sort of break it down for them, if we use Jen Anderson as the gold standard, she rolled with it. So I would hope that we can expect that efficiency without hand-holding. In other words, I was pleasantly surprised, Jen, how you totally tackled this thing. And it seems like every item, on this, and that you've digested what needs to be done. You've worked on things, and you've brought it to a point by yourself in a way that we're possibly assuming that other department heads can't do.
I'm not assuming anything. I just think we need to break it down for everyone.
No, but what I'm saying is, my example is, it sounds like Jen didn't need anyone to do that for her.
No.
So are we saying that she's the exception, or may we expect that of everyone else?
Well, an exception isn't pretty good. No, but for me, but again, right, we've had the document for a year. My department is 2 people. we're constantly trying to like tread water and so that's just hitting the back burner, right? But that was part of Tim's suggestion with this year in asking for the town to take, we have the opportunity for funding to be able to address this.
Right.
So I think for a lot of people, number one, it's just they need that push again to say, hey man, this is on your radar. Like you guys, you know, make sure you're trying to, you know, how are you tackling it? And again, giving them that funding direction, you know, type thing. I mean, a lot of small stuff in town hall, veterans hall, senior center can be done by maintenance, but it's things they would have to purchase. So how much of their budget every year that could be used towards
Yeah,
that,
right.
thing. But again, I think it's that if you guys were to look at that whole thing, like Matt is saying, if we're going to apply as a town for MOD grant or whatever, what is the overall thing in police or senior center or whatever that really needs to be the focus every year? But I think a lot of people, it's just, you know, it's hard to put this on their radar with their everyday tasks. So whatever facilitation and direction you can give them, I'm sure would be welcome. I just had a different opportunity than others to, at this point to be able to do it.
Fair enough.
All right, so thank you, Jen. So Matt and Daryl, what is this working group? How often will we meet? How many in number? How many people? 2?
I think any more than 3 and we'd be back to kind of a full meeting.
Right.
So yeah, 2 to 3, I think is
Do
probably
you
fine.
think 2? Do you think 2 is too few?
Well, it depends on, no, it
No.
depends.
This isn't rocket science. Everything's laid out. I mean,
Right.
you're just doing the muscle work that we
Right.
haven't been able to really tease out during a meeting. So
And-
Right.
and
people
I
can-
think 2
yeah.
people. I think 2 people can tackle this. Anyone up to the task? I'm gonna be a wise guy and say, hey, Catherine Dorr, what are you up to? I haven't heard a lot from you. Talk to me.
Well, while everyone was talking, I looked up and it looks like the Library Planning and Building Committee is having a meeting on the 31st that I am looking to get probably in contact with them because they're starting to move on to the internal phase of
Mhm.
planning the building. So that's when they need to take the ADA concerns into account. So I need to figure out how I can get in contact with them and maybe get on their agenda for the 31st. So
Okay, who's?
Wait a minute, Catherine, you kind of sidestepped the question though.
Yeah, you did.
yeah,
I
I did. Yeah.
No, because it does sound like you are busy and
Okay.
I totally get that, but would there be an opportunity for you to lend your knowledge of everything about this town?
Yeah.
Because you know stuff that the rest of us don't.
Hmm.
Helping with the prioritization, because like we know some of the priorities versus the low-hanging fruit. I
Yeah.
think, you know, that's where your expertise may be most helpful.
Yeah.
With knocking this out. So, and I don't mean to diminish the other work you're doing, because I think that's great too.
Yeah.
But I remember when we had a few meetings back in the old days, in whatever meeting room in the municipal center, that
Yeah.
you had a lot of input about a lot of the buildings that were in the report.
Yeah. And particularly because I have the lifelong experience.
I did not say that, but yeah.
Going on 33 years of experience here. And particularly with the library, because that's what I frequented a lot, particularly as a kid. So, yeah, I would be willing to. I mean, my schedule is wide open right now. I got nothing going on. So,
Okay.
and I was having issues with particularly who I was supposed to be reaching out to, particularly with the, since the main library isn't in the report anymore, considering it's being redone, and the location right now is a temporary location, and then Nelson is under a completely different purview
Right.
too.
Yeah.
So,
So,
Yeah.
so this working group of 2, anyone else willing to want to break it down with Catherine?
I'm happy to give it a shot. I think I can definitely take some of the information out of, if you can get me the Word document, I
Okay,
think that's probably where I'm going to be most useful in actually just extracting that and getting it into Excel. And then, maybe Catherine and I can work on formatting it and organizing it in a way. And maybe one, I don't know what the best process is to get it out, but
okay.
I think that should work fine.
Okay, so I can get you the Word doc, Matt, and exchanging emails and phone numbers and such. What do you think would be a reasonable time frame to be breaking this down without overwhelming you with all your other commitments?
I would say let's just have a check-in and put an agenda item on our next meeting in September.
Yeah.
And we'll see where we've gotten to. So I'll just reach out with Catherine and
Okay.
we'll try to schedule a couple meetings and just see how it goes.
Okay.
If it turns out to be a total train wreck, then we don't have to do it that way, but it just seems like that's going to be a valuable thing for us to kind of then, as once we have it into an Excel document and we can start talking about with each of the items that's on there with what's on the actual transition plan, then we can kind of overlay, which department does this go to and what's the potential funding source, and we can kind of add other stuff on there to help organize it and
Yeah.
and parse it out so that then people can approach their respective departments.
Right.
Thank you.
And-
Yes, Daryl.
And we haven't started talking about old business 6A yet, but from talking to Jeff Dugan, if we do have something that's kind of like a checklist, that's a good thing because people are we can ask that these committees, these departments come back and let us know where they're at and ask for any of our assistance. So that can then become a standing agenda item in time where we're checking in with people to see how they're doing and what their roadblocks are and what do you need help with. And,
And I have a just suggestion as
Christie.
someone who remembers our first two meetings. And Matt, this is mostly for your benefit. I would really like us to see us, since now we can just take the parks and playgrounds off our plate because Jen ran with that.
yeah,
I remember one of our top priorities, we were talking about, in our view, which buildings had the most traffic, most usership, and widest range of disability that might be interacting with that building. And
Can you say this again? Traffic?
yeah,
traffic,
operational hours, and widest range of disability, because there's such a spectrum of disability. And physically, we viewed that as being the municipal center with the senior center attached as one unit. And then secondly was, of course, the website. Anything Town of Grafton website. That may not be our purview right now, but if I could just ask personally, and if you don't want to do that first, then leave it to me, because I really have such a heart for making the municipal center an accessible building. But if you wouldn't mind really looking at that building first, because that's where most of our traffic in Grafton really interacts and uses, well, at least they used to use foot traffic wise, for so many different events, activities, purposes, school committee. I mean, there's so much going in and out of that building. It's ripe for getting, well, in my view, it's ripe for having, being done first, tackled first.
right,
Okay.
All
So
right.
right.
not that I'm telling you what to do, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no worries. We
So we
gotta
all
have to
set
start
with-
somewhere.
All right,
Yeah.
so we all set with agenda item 3 and the working group, Catherine and Matt, and I'll put as a follow-up on progress for September's agenda.
Roger,
Daryl,
I move we make Catherine and Matt a working group. For as long as they need to be a working group to break down the giant report into each of its different components.
all right, motion made by Daryl. Any second?
Could we strike working group and call it a subcommittee as Matt suggested?
Sure.
Sure.
I will second.
Okay, motion made by Daryl, seconded by Christie. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. Daryl Reining,
Aye.
Christie Proctor,
Aye.
Matt Often,
I,
Catherine Dorr,
Aye.
Roger Trahan, I declare the motion carried unanimously 5-0. Okay, so moving on to agenda item, we've been playing musical chairs here. So we've already, so basically, under old business, we've tackled 6B, celebrates the holiday. So on to old business. You'll recall last meeting, maybe, that I had planned on speaking with Jeff Dugan at the Mass Office on Disability, the community liaison.
I'm gonna run
Dar-
and get my notes. Do you have your notes?
No, I don't, not in front of me.
All right, hold on. Mine are upstairs. One
Oh,
sec.
Oh,
Keep
boy.
going, keep going.
Okay, so what happened is that Daryl was willing to hop on that call, so we scheduled a Zoom meeting to really discuss what his role was in helping disability commissions. So we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. He was extremely helpful. It was, I recall, maybe a 45-minute plus meeting on the 23rd of July. And from that discussion, and Daryl has her notes, she's getting them from upstairs, led to Mr. Dugan sending me all those links that I subsequently sent you. Some of them were documents. So what I ended up doing is I incorporated that not only in an email I sent to you with the hyperlinks and then the documents that weren't contained in the hyperlinks, but I incorporated that same information in this meeting packet tonight. And regarding documents, reference materials, resources, brochures, things of that nature that will help us not only organize ourselves as a commission, but also give us materials to disseminate within the community. And so I know that some of them, and I'll, I'll show them to you here, but they're various items, Mass Office on Disability Overview, Client Assistance Program, Community Services Unit, various brochures and documents and links, not only for us as a commission, but to the greater community to either put on our web page and or do a little printing of our own for when life opens back up again. When people are at various areas of town, they can pick up these brochures and have them at hand, whatever interests them. I know some of these, lots of brochures are available at the library, senior center, and that sort of thing. So, so I'm not recalling off the top of my head, and I'm going to ask Daryl to fill in the gaps as to.
All right, I'm gonna fill in the gaps because I got my notes.
Yeah, please.
Good.
I don't know what you just said, but one of my concerns was our role and responsibilities, and he advised us as a group to adopt goals for the year, to work with everybody's expertise because we don't all have the same expertise. And he's got good samples on his website. It reminds me a lot of MASC, and I keep going back to that because that's my experience. But he had good samples of that. We are, what did he say? We are an advisory board, and it is our duty to bring our concerns to the appointing authority, which is the Board of Selectmen. And it's our duty to work with those individuals within the municipal center. So anyway, I think goals is a good idea. He also provides trainings, and he provides trainings not just to us, but to all of anyone in the municipal center and surrounding areas that need these trainings to understand what our board is, what the commission is, what it's supposed to do, and the resources he can offer. So I actually thought would be a great idea to have him come and do a training. And we were going to talk about that tonight, but I don't know if it's appropriate now with an interim town administrator. I mean, Matt, you need to weigh in on that. But he was a walking wealth of information. You know, our job is to do barrier removal. His training would provide insight on how commissions function. 22G funds.
Those are the accessible parking violations.
Yep. Yep, he can give us links to the grant programs. Tell us who to reach out to for federal grants. Let's see. So anyway, he thought for us, our first goal should be goals and objectives and bylaws. And the second part should be what is being offered by MOD. So I'm paraphrasing my notes, but
Right. No, that was my recollection.
going to
Was
ask
that-
the board, Roger, I don't know if you mentioned this, but we were going to ask to invite him to our September meeting.
Yes, and one of the things that occurred and as this came along, he had indicated he was available
Yep.
for what would be our normal meeting on September 17th. He said, set aside about 90 minutes, okay? And I just wanted to point out that since that discussion, Daryl,
Yeah.
the municipal ADA improvement grant program, which is agenda item 7, has come about and it may take up some of our time at the next meeting to discuss putting our weight behind some of these grants that may come forward. I don't want the meeting to go to a really, excessive period of time. And if he's already telling us 90 minutes, do you think that in light of the municipal ADA improvement grant program and possible items that may, be, have some, significant discussion, whether that maybe we should push that invite to October? What are your thoughts, Daryl? And
I
the rest of
mean-
the commission?
I'm looking at my notes and I'm thinking, did he think that before he met with us, we were going to do our first step goals and objectives and bylaws?
I don't know. I think my understanding was that it wasn't so much to help guide us as a commission to walk us through that process. I thought it was to really give a more broad overview of what MOD does.
Yeah.
And at a high level, what he can do to help us help the town. And so
Right.
versus be the facilitator of, let's say, a workshop meeting on developing such goals and objectives and bylaws. So I think he was more coming
To kick it off.
in front of us in an educator role.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea.
So,
But he had also said we should invite other stakeholders in the municipal government who
right,
need to understand what it is commissions do and why we are here. Because some of the stuff he brings to that first meeting or usually gives out is the disability rights law book,
Oh, yeah.
the
Right.
guidebook. They have a guidebook, resources for Title II. Yeah. What, Christy?
So remember how we wanted to change our, forgive me about the language, the charter that's in the town language? I mean,
The
it's so
charge, the
old.
charge.
The charge, not the charter. Okay. Do we have to change that charge first before we develop our goals, objectives, and bylaws? Because I think that will that will be a necessary step to creating things that really do align together from our charge. So, I
And-
mean, I know he says the first thing we should do, or maybe he was saying the first goal, Daryl, the first goal is to create goals, objectives, and bylaws. I'd even predate that or put that on the back burner and say our first thing should be to change the charge.
And
Yeah.
one of the things, let me mention this, in my back and forth with Mr. Dugan, I asked him, and I don't have the email in front of me, but I had directed him to the expansive charge of the Disability Commission as reconstituted last August of 19. And I brought these concerns to him that it seemed like, absent us being an actual department in town that was available on a daily basis, there was a lot of things being asked that seemed to be beyond our daily, our inability to do as a commission. And so looking at the expanded charge compared to the old charge when it was first formed in 09, he opined that our charge as it existed was perfect. I'm like, okay, and wasn't too expansive, that the scope, the expanded scope as worded on our webpage per the
It's just-
select board was totally within line of what we're supposed to be
Yeah,
doing.
it's just grammatically horrific. And
Yes, and the language is old. I
yeah,
mean, we don't use those words anymore.
Which
I mean,
words?
Oh, handicapped. I think mental disability. I forget. Wheelchair bound. I mean, just some of that language was like, it just, yeah. If we could make it less about the label of a disability and more about the environment that's inaccessible, so that we're not using labels, but we're
Mhm.
being problem solvers to make things accessible. I think
Yeah.
Right.
and
that
that's
changes the mission from what people have as a disability, which is their private business, to saying our mission is to create an equitable, accessible town, community, and environment.
so
Right.
he told us to look at the Situate Town webpage.
Okay.
Okay.
And here's the other shocker. Schools are a part of this. And schools should be included and expected that we will continue to the grant program until, so that the schools self-evaluate and address whatever they need to address.
Yeah,
So-
and I'll get to that at 7, that they're not precluded from the ADA improvement grant,
Wow.
even though they have not had a self-eval. They can still apply. So I'll discuss that in greater detail when we jump into 7. I clarified that today with a late afternoon email with MOD. So are you saying, all right, looking at the Situate webpage, Daryl, are you saying that they're less expansive or more expansive?
No, he asked us to look at it. I didn't look at it yet, though.
Okay, okay,
And that came upon, he was talking about, look at the goals that he has posted, which I've looked at those goals. There are 10 of them. You know, his advice was only take on expertise that you have. You're not going to cover all 10 topics, which I thought was appropriate. I mean, of course, you use the expertise you have. So anyway, I was looking forward to having him because I do feel like everybody needs some kind of education so that we're all on the same page. And whatever other town entities need to be a part of that, we need to invite.
and who would that be?
Well, we were going to invite the town administrator,
Right,
right? Obviously the assistant administrator, maybe department heads. I don't know.
right.
Yeah.
Jay, you know, whoever.
Right.
And we can't forget the staff component. I mean, obviously Bob, but I mean, we were talking that there's really no human resources, but who manages all the accommodation requests that come in for schools? I'm sure it's the individual
Oh,
principals, but
they have one. They have an HR. And
Yeah, they do.
she's lovely. I mean, Kristen could come as well, but anyway, I was hoping he wasn't gonna say the school department,
well, that's just,
because
been
right
there.
now I have major empathy for schools. I really do. We're in rough shape.
And I think and through that, and I'm gonna have to dig up this email and bring it forth as part of the future discussion, in that it's my understanding though that, okay, looking at our charge, it's, we report to the select board as our appointing authority, but through the town administrator. And that
Right.
the extent to which is school issues,
Would
that-
be through the superintendent and
Right.
his designees.
Right.
Absolutely. We're not there. We are an advisory board.
yeah,
We have no authority. We don't have authority, so.
Right. So we're not going to tackle that list tonight, but it could be expansive. But I don't want 50 people on a Zoom meeting either. If it, I mean, there has to be a workable number of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should give him a call again.
Wait, for training, 50 people, that's normal.
Yeah, that is normal.
I was gonna say, we've done 250 at our school.
All right. So what I'm talking about is,
171.
all right, so what I'm saying is that then, okay, for October, then that would be our only agenda item.
Yeah,
Okay,
It would be a training, or we select another night and say, we are going to host a training. And we do it outside the purview of the meeting. We host it as a professional development / training.
mhm.
And you can certainly record it and send it to the department heads. I
And-
think,
have
I
it on our
think-
website. Good idea.
absolutely, key department heads probably want to be in that training for sure. I don't see any reason not to have the temporary town administrator, although it's
Okay,
you keep 6 one, half dozen of another. But yeah, the HR folks for sure. Public safety and fire definitely want to be in there. Anybody who's responsible, maybe a couple of the key rec department folks. Yeah, I think you could probably put together a list of 15 to 20 key employees, and that would be fine, and record it and, make it accessible to everybody else.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Roger, I think Laura has cracked the closed captioning now on Zoom. So
Okay,
you might
Good.
want to, it was not a simple thing, but you might want to reach out to her to just see what, I don't know what that you have to hire a service, and I don't know how good it is and all
Well,
of that.
It all depends on the presenter, actually. So if he were to present and be the only speaker on screen using Google Slides, it will automatically caption live. So if he is using his software platform in Google Slides, that would be perfect. If he's using WebEx, that could be another accessible platform. Zoom, you're right, Matt. Zoom for live captioning, you have to hire a captionist, which is about $120 an hour. I can help secure one. We use them at our college. And I know, but an interpreter, minimum
know.
2 hours is 120. So
yeah, we would have to find the resource, the
Right.
finances to do.
I just think we got to walk the walk, right? So
right, we do. And then after the fact, Zoom, you can access your audio file probably within less than 10 minutes of the recording, but to have it captioned, it will take a little bit longer to render the captions, and it will probably take about 2 hours for an hour presentation, or actually you were talking 90 minutes, so it might be a little bit longer. If we want to record it in another way and you want me to caption it via YouTube, I can do that as well. I've had to learn all of this recently. And I just know I can't be a live captionist. It's amazing how much, if you're used to captioning, you want that word up within 2 to 3 seconds of it being spoken. Not the person. I am not the person.
I'm
Fair
not
enough.
either.
You want a professional. And I saw such an amazing captionist for the Mass Colleges Online Technology Conference. I have never seen someone actually back up a word, fix it, and keep going. I mean, they were that good. Most people just leave their mistakes. If you watch news,
Yeah,
they never fix it. This person fixed and went back and kept going.
Wow.
Nice.
I don't know that person's name, but
So you're saying, Matt, that Laura's done, are you talking for school committee? They now have the closed captioning addressed moving forward?
She's figured it out. I don't know if that's going to be featured in all of her meetings, but for sure, she was really trying to get the accessibility component to the all the meetings that they had for public outreach for school opening issues, because they're getting, in some cases, I think they had up to 500 attendees in one of their meetings. So this is something that, hundreds or actually thousands of families all need, and it's critical information, and it's kind of one-time information.
yeah.
So it's just really important. So I'm not sure exactly where she's at, but she's been plugging away at figuring out how to do it on Zoom, and I think she's got it at this point. So
That's huge. That is
well,
huge.
I know we share interpreters because I see our interpreters at school events at nighttime. And so the school interpreters, I believe, use it the same way we do, which instead of entering the Zoom room, they'll actually FaceTime with folks so that they can watch the Zoom or watch the interpreter interpret. So, because sometimes on the Zoom channel, you've got the screen sharing, and then you can't see the interpreter large. So, there's a lot of workarounds that our deaf community uses, and there's a lot of folks who are deaf in Grafton. So we've got to remember that.
absolutely.
All right, so, so do you want to land on well, I guess we'd need to find some Zoom time, but do you want to land on a potential date in October?
Well, do we have to check the Zoom channel availability first? Because I know other meetings run at specific times, and sometimes there isn't a Zoom channel available.
Okay. All right, so we're looking at then 2 meetings in October, one which is our regularly scheduled meeting, and then one for Jeff Dugan. I can reach out to him and see his availability.
Right.
Okay. Didn't mean to bury you with documents, but I just figured it by expanding those hyperlinks and throwing it here and on the meeting packet would memorialize it. If anyone misplaced any of the emails, at least we could go back and look on the town webpage for all these links and such. So Daryl, do you want me to reach out to Jeff and see what his availability is? I think he may have some expectation and may have put aside that date in September. So
Yeah,
I'll
you
just
did.
all right, I'll call that off. And I'll email him in the morning and ask him, what, have him give me some dates and times.
Okay.
And
Sounds
I'm
good.
thinking, yeah, and I think 6:30 seems to be a good time, not too early, not too late.
Yeah, but ending at 9 is not good.
Well, hey, I know. We're almost at that point. I know.
I know.
I know. You don't need to remind
And
me.
it's your
Daryl.
birthday.
It's my birthday. The night ain't over yet. So every day is my birthday. I'm treated well on Old Upton Road.
That is awesome.
So, so everyone okay then with moving to new business, municipal ADA improvement grant program, FY21 cycle, that opened on August 10th and closes on October 9th. You may recall us having visited this in our first meeting as a group back on September 19th of last year. And at that point, there was just one grant application, and that was for the back of the municipal center, both ramps, and Becca Meekins had spoken with us. So Matt, if it comes to, and the rest of the commission, comes to the town resubmitting that application, if the work is not already underway, I think the funding existed, but we were shooting for the grant to complete the work. If that comes before us to be resubmitted, it's pretty much a completed document. And our meeting was recorded. So if you go to GCTV on that date, and the meeting packet of that date, it doesn't need to be like rehashed if it comes to a resubmission. So this, I included the the guidelines and parameters. It was about 3 to 4 pages that outline the parameters and having more points and weight. If you have an active disability commission, you've had a ADA self-evaluation transition plan, which we have. Things which really prove that there aren't just a handful of people benefiting, that it is the most bang for the buck. In that you have at least some quotes that kind of nail down within a reasonable window what this thing is going to cost, not just grabbing a number out of the sky and such. So those are some of the parameters that are placed before those applicants. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out, and I had reached out to you, Matt, earlier, and spoke with Laura. I had reached out to Jeff Dugan, and then he put me in touch with Carl Bryan at the Mass Office on Disability. He's the grant compliance coordinator. And the question I had was whether or not, while recognizing that our ADA self-eval and transition plan was limited to municipal non-schools, because whether the school district would be precluded from applying. And his answer was no, they wouldn't be precluded from applying. And I'll read you the email just so I'm not trying to paraphrase his
So
words.
Roger, can I interrupt?
Yeah, sure.
So the point is we are wondering who's applying for this grant right now.
Well, okay, so right now, the 2 grants that could be in front of us that we know of are Jen Anderson for
Yeah.
rec, and the possibility of a resubmission of what Becca and us as a commission had signed up on. We were co-applicants,
Right.
as you may recall. It's my understanding that the funding was sort of there for that project, but in a bucket. And if the grant wasn't approved, that work would still be done and we wouldn't necessarily wait for another grant cycle. So, so I don't know whether that work whether that's in the works, whether that
Okay.
work could start tomorrow. So we'll have to ask, I guess,
So I guess,
Becca.
yep. So the point is the grant is now coming due. You
Right.
printed out exactly what the specifics are about the grant. Jen
Yeah.
Anderson is definitely going for one and we just
Yeah.
signed on to that.
Yep.
But we don't know if anyone else is going for one. And Jeff did definitely mention schools could
Right.
apply for one, because
Yeah.
there's planning grant and there's project grants. But, so, I
Right.
guess,
And I don't know, I don't recall whether we maybe my effort was a duplication. I don't recall whether or not we mentioned to Jeff that the schools were not included in the original.
no, we did,
Okay.
we
Then
did.
that's my bad. Then Carl Bryan simply reaffirmed it, that he wanted to clarify, is the school entirely within the boundaries of the town, which is yes. And he basically said that, that acknowledged, at least in writing, that they were eligible and it's up to 250, but he said the more competitive your application, the higher you go to that 250K, the more competitive your application will become.
Right, but we don't know who else wants to apply for this grant right now.
No, and well, the thing is, I don't know who is aware of the grant or who's on the mailing list.
Okay,
It came Joanne Duncan's way through the TA's office. And so she had asked me about, she became aware that was released before I did, same day.
yep,
And so it got put up on the web page. So I don't know who within the MOD sent and to whom within Grafton, and or who
I
in
think
Grafton
that came through MMA. I got that.
did it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there could be various stakeholders that may be in the process of this or are thinking of it.
maybe not, because we don't have all of our information disseminated.
Right. So we need to educate on the quick
Well,
various,
at least Jen Anderson's doing it.
right. So,
But Roger, to go back to the schools for a second. So
sure.
Yep,
they don't have a transition plan. And the submission date is early October.
Right.
They're not going to submit anything. I mean,
Right.
realistically, they don't have anything lined up.
Right.
And especially not at the $250,000 or close to that level where something has been quoted and designed, like, whatever.
Right.
And one of the things that came to
but
mind
you know
is,
what,
oh,
sorry.
Daryl, yeah,
That can definitely be something that we can make Jay aware of, that there is money out there, whoever their
Right.
grant person is,
Right.
I'm not sure who it is, for the future.
Absolutely.
This will
And
come around again, and planning can happen,
And-
this year.
and I know that, a lot of these things that, as far as a self-eval and transition plan, these things take time, and a lot of the aspects that need to be remediated, some require specs or engineering work or whatever, and are costlier items. And I had actually pointed this out to Laura earlier. I had reached out to her. I think for what came to mind immediately was what the school department had talked about was doorknobs, for instance. They were quoting, not quoting, but they were talking about, and they got the number from somewhere, X number of doorknobs times X number per doorknob equaled, I think it was six figure, what, $500,000 or 250. It was a high number. It was in the six figures. And I thought that them having identified a deficiency,
Right. But
even
they
in the
don't have-
absence of, so would that, why would the school
Because-
district not want to go for that?
Because if you look at what's required to submit,
Yeah,
they don't have it.
okay,
So part of that's a transition plan. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are required to submit.
well, here's the thing, what Carl Bryan said is that they fall under, even though the schools weren't part of the transition plan, they would fall under the eligibility requirements. They would fall under as eligible the fact that the transition plan existed already for the municipal side, even though it didn't include the schools.
Okay.
So that's why I know the meeting's going late. But
You
that's,
know what? Here's the deal. Do you
Yeah.
want me to reach out? Because I know that in my school district, we
Yep.
apply for grants whenever we see them come up, even if we
Sure.
only have 2 weeks or a week and a half to do it.
right.
And we've been awarded a ton of money. So if you want me to reach out to the schools to see if they have something that we could put together,
Yeah,
I will do that. And if not, my thinking is probably the only ones coming through are gonna
Right.
be Jen Anderson, the rec department.
Right. so you're saying you wanted to reach out to someone?
Sure, I will talk to Jay.
All right, and I told Laura I'd forward her this email. I had not yet done that. It came to, and I can forward it to the rest of the
I mean,
commission.
the school committee's not gonna have one thing to do with grant stuff.
Right, right,
That's in-house only,
right.
you
Okay.
know?
So yeah, no, Carl Bryan said that as far as Grafton having a self-eval in the school, if the school district is within the entire bounds of Grafton, then the prerequisites for the grant app are met. That's what he said. And I was surprised at that, but
All
that-
right, well, I don't know who their grant person is, but I will share this information, and if Tony LeMay already has all the numbers put together for doorknobs, perhaps they'll go for it. You never know.
I know, it seems like something on the quick, but I mean, if
Well,
we
that
can get-
happens. I mean, grants pop up all the time in our world, and,
Right,
you
And
know,
does that mean, can I just ask real quick, are we only allowed one applicant per town, or can 3 or 4 of us?
no, if there were a limit, I would have expected there a limit to be listed, but I don't see where we couldn't throw 20 grants at them,
Okay,
But, and they weigh each according to their own merits, so. So I'll forward that,
good prompt. I'm telling my superintendent about it too.
shush, no. No, anything that can help those with, disabilities, wherever they may be, are beneficial. So I'm a good sport, even if other towns beat us out. Okay, so how do we get that information? Matt, you said that MMA disseminated that, so how is that then flow down to other department heads and people that are stakeholders on the self-eval?
It's a good question. I'm not sure how I ended up on their list.
Okay,
I've been to a bunch of their town finance committee events. So it could just be that I'm subscribed to one of their communications. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
yeah, I think the Association of Town Finance Committees sends things to MMA, and then being newly elected, you probably further on a priority list to be educated and brought into the loop, so.
It does look like this is it looks like an annual grant program. though.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's no guarantee that this is gonna be funded, but they're not gonna hold it up waiting for they're going according to their normal schedule. So,
Yep,
um,
absolutely.
okay, so, all right, and then under, I don't know if you'd call it under new business, and maybe this is being repetitious, somewhere you can squeeze it in, Chris, the closed captioning seems to be an item that could be considered new business, even though we discussed it before item 7. It would seem to need to fit somewhere, okay? So I guess we could call that new business. Where would you have put it?
well, do you want me to include it under the discussion for Jeff Dugan's presentation, how we're going to model
Yeah.
accessibility? That's where I could put it.
That's fine.
Yep.
That's
And
fine.
I think at another time, I'd love to see a training on how to make accessible PowerPoints and Zoom
Mhm.
trainings and
Okay.
something for the town, because a lot of this stuff is easy, but not everybody wants to go to YouTube. They really do want a hand-holding experience. So,
Right.
you know, anyways,
Okay, then next meeting, well, wait a minute. All right, so how do we get this to people? As
Get
far
what?
as the making sure enough people know about the grant program that may want to apply for it.
do we still have our Facebook page?
I don't know.
Well, if we don't, we should. And if Mass Office of Disability has a Facebook page, I bet they have it posted there
too.
and we just
Yep.
have to share.
Yeah.
No,
I
no,
s-
I'm talking about internally. In other words,
That's
within
what I
Grafton.
mean. Well, oh, okay, gotcha.
In other words, make them aware that, okay, guess what? Here's a grant program. We got a month to work with,
Yeah,
and we want to get as many opportunities in the pipeline as possible.
can we
And how
ask
do we-
Becca
how
to
do we-
disseminate it? I don't know if she does a daily email to everybody or to department heads. Or if she does a weekly digest with news and information for the town. But in this age of COVID, without being face to face, I hope there is some regular static communication either every Monday or every Friday going out to all the town
Right.
employees.
Matt, not to put another thing on you, would you feel comfortable reaching out to Becca to maybe help facilitate such a communication? Is that something you'd be willing to do or have any concern about? And what is the commission, what are the commission's thoughts on that?
Sure. So just a quick communication out to department heads around making them aware of this grant opportunity.
Yeah, just,
And then maybe extracting these pages from our, actually, I think I sent it as a document. I sent it to everyone as a separate document as well in advance of the meeting. But it's the pages that are the MOD link. Yes, Daryl?
I'm just wondering if maybe you should just email Becca and attach the pages of the grant application and make her aware because she'll make everyone else aware. Or
Alright,
she'll make the.
Are you speaking with me or are you speaking to me, Daryl, or Matt?
Yes, I'm speaking to you, Roger.
Okay, I'll do it.
Roger, just forward the email.
I'd agree with that. And I think, look,
Okay.
we don't need to go to all department heads, and
Right.
Becca knows the ins and outs of the budget
Yeah.
and the capital plan. So
Yep.
she's gonna know the
Okay.
3 to 4 department heads to reach out to.
Yeah,
Right. And actually, through the selectman, select board town administrator's office, she's been made aware of this, but I will forward the separate document once more.
and honestly, Roger, that's all you can do. If it
I know.
stops in committee right there, you gotta let it go.
Oh, yeah, I pull my hair out trying to maybe think I can be more helpful than I can be. Just because there's such a deadline and, you know, every town is under such financial constraints that any grant we can land is huge, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yep,
um,
absolutely.
I should have put my fighting hat on to, you know, to duke it out with other towns to, you know, because that October 9th deadline is going to be like right on us. So, okay, so, next meeting, item 8, September 17th at 6:30. Actually, I have the Zoom meeting booked through December and it's the same link. And I think it's going to be the same password that you got too. But you'll get within 24 hours, you'll get an automatic notice. So, September 17th, 2020, it's a Thursday at 6:30. So, please feel free to email me and even Missy as a regular clerk, items that you want to maybe see added to the agenda.
Okay,
All right, motion to adjourn. Do I have one?
so moved.
All right, any
Second.
second? All right, motion made and seconded by roll call. Daryl Reining,
Aye.
Chrissy Proctor,
Aye.
Matt Offen,
I
Catherine Dorr,
Aye.
Roger Trahan. I declare the motion carried. This meeting is adjourned 9:01 PM.